MSD podcast, Enemy Physical Manipulation. Manipulated movement is a very important part of close quarters combat skills capabilities and involves not only enemy forced ground cover and decentralization, but also combat and resistance, including statically holding ground as part of threat neutralization. Exponents and proponents must have an understanding of human anatomy, body mechanics, expedient actions, and resistance and yielding, as well as other minor and major components that provide control, containment, forced movement, part of specifics in relation to specific objective achievement. Manipulation in relation to twisting, turning, and redirection of the enemy and of bodily parts requires an understanding of flexion, hyperextension, ranges of movement, and anatomy tolerances. While in a battlefield kill or die actions on, with overkill or at minimum 3/4 of total dynamic force levels, outputs being the reality, concerns and relations to excessive forces are desirable and not such a concern as in civilian self-defense or law enforcement control and restraint and defensive tactics skills employments. Combatants must understand enemy lifting both from a correct position and posture perspective in order to maintain combatant safety, to reduce the risks of self-injury in the execution of lifting skills, and they must also understand contingency capabilities in order to effectively at real time employ changes in lifting positions and means and methods. Understanding compound grips and seizure and securing positioning and placement, along with generating of required lifting forces and expedient action lifting and manipulation of the enemy, as well as controlled lesser expedient manipulation, provides increased options and capabilities to achieve objectives. Combatants must also have knowledge of autonomic reactions to contact and manipulation and human responses to such actions taken as part of effectively manipulating an enemy. Controlled changing of positional holding by means of CQC aided secure lifting means and methods is most important, as secure seizure grip control must never be sacrificed or compromised. It is also very important that the combatant understands head and neck placement and positioning during dynamic lifting, enemy manipulation, especially in high lift skills executions, to avoid neck injuries through the enemy's torso weight, bodily movements that could cause injuries to the combatant's cervical spine. Turning and twisting manipulation ranges from high-level head seizure and securing to upper torso, waistline, and arms and legs. There are also skills that combine dual levels manipulation as part of specific containment, force movement, as well as lifting and decentralization. Some combined and individual actions include targeting soft, sensitive targets, generating pain compliance, and as such, forced enemy movements. The old saying I was taught as a young exponent has always proven and still proves very true, in that putting hard thumbs and fingers in orifices or targeting soft and sensitive targets by spiking, poking, squeezing, ringing, rotating and stretching can take a lot of weight and strength away from the enemy, making them pliable to your requirements. It is important the combatant understands the difference between turning and twisting or rotating, and also knows the load tolerance realities and the maximum range of movement for safe and effective control and objective achievement. This will be both by visual and by feel. Decentralization can be achieved by rapid or reduced speed and momentum means and methods, depending on objective achievement required outcomes and objective achievement intentions. MIL CQC decentralization skills not only employ stability destruction force movements, but also close to point blank body contact range targeting of delicate human sensors and life support systems, and general anatomy soft targets that create self-preservation and disengagement reactions and responses. Such targeting is important in the initiation of decentralization to kick off the desired movement and direction of the enemy groundward. Containing and controlling of the enemy at close quarters involves some or all of the principles of enemy seizure and securing. combatant safe positioning, and hard boots stability maintaining, combined with flexion and hyperextension capabilities, as well as controlled deliberate enemy movement actions to keep them in a status of having to self-protect and continuously employ balance and stability maintaining actions. Controlling and containing must provide the combatant with the capability to, without losing contact and control, effectively change from one position to another while maintaining both a secure seizure of the enemy and maintaining combatant hard cover protection and hard boot stability. Seizing, securing, containing, and controlling requires the combatant to be confident and competent at single and dual grips holds on the enemy, including opposing forces, dual anatomy, and compound clasp, seizure, and securing holds of the enemy. The CQC rule of never releasing a grip until the other grip has been achieved, or never releasing a grip unless an offensive combat action is going to be employed is very important. Understanding leverage, including tipping points, as part of keeping the enemy in an uneasy off-balance position reduces risk and is important in the setup of both detainee handling and battlefield takedowns, as well as wide-ranging other means and methods of threat neutralization. 1 ounce can topple 1,000 pounds is a saying that was taught to me by my former instructor at the School of Self-Defense, New York, in the 1980s and 90s, the late Charlie Nelson. European military close combat and military self-defense skills are not about skills dependent on superior physical attributes or physicality, but are more based on proven knowledge of anatomy, body functions, and anatomy destruction as part of threat neutralization objective achievement. They require considerably less physical output, but still demand the combatant's understanding of the importance of expedient action, hard cover guarding protection, and the foul or deadly tricks brigade practices of battlefield threat neutralization. Enemy redirection, positioning, and repositioning comes down to a sound understanding of seizing, securing, and bodily point-blank range contact, including enemy loading by making them wear your bodily weight, often using the enemy as cover against their own offensive actions on attempts. Combatant must maintain the self-protect and self-preservation mode at all times and ensure the enemy is in a vulnerable position and the combatant has access to their soft target. The employment of stationary, static, forced movements, tracking or sliding forward, as well as yielding, blocking or sliding backwards, is not only important in the holding of ground and kicking off of manipulated directional movements, but also in the setup of specific forced movements, including lifting and decentralization. Being able to hold ground but change positioning statically without dynamic movement off the mark or by small movements enhances control and safety in the execution of threat neutralization. Having full strategies to restrict or prevent enemy movements and actions while maintaining hard cover guarding protection increases chances of threat neutralization by reducing enemy attack or counterattack opportunities and capabilities. Control and containment also includes static employments of stress positions to enable stationary close to point blank bodily contact range targeting of soft targets, including targeting lower extremities to destroy the integrity of the knee joint and kneecap ligaments. Manipulation can be achieved in a stand-up status or on the ground, and not only by utilizing the hands, arms, and torso, but also by utilizing the arch of the boot sole, knee, and shin bone, and by other means, including by utilizing weapons and improvised weapons to achieve both pain compliance and forced movement and positional manipulation. Utilizing one or multiple sensors to locate targets where vision is not available or not fully available is a built-in capability and strategy to maintain control, restrict or prevent movement and contact with targets to provide wide-ranging required objectives outcomes. These objectives include everything from static containment through to stress position, stationary securing, and other methods of threat neutralization, including incapacitation, decentralization, and more. Employing skills to compromise enemy stability can reduce offensive actions executions, or at least reduce the physicality output of such actions. The employment of hyperextension to reduce assault actions or to cause static pain, compliance as part of control and containment, or other means and methods of threat neutralization is made possible by effective setup practices and principles that restrict enemy actions, as well as focusing on target access and enemy stability compromising to enable unarmed combat offensive actions, accurate employments. Likewise, with flexion, the enemy can be manipulated, decentralized, or controlled and contained to enable wide-ranging means and methods of threat neutralization for specific situations, roles, and duties, and in relation to wide-ranging threats. Enemy manipulation has wide-ranging usages that can safely and effectively end hostilities and, as such, provide threat neutralization. Path clearing, rapid enemy decentralization, ground control and containment, including for the application of mechanical restraints, can be effectively employed by means of enemy manipulation. Maneuvering the enemy around obstacles, putting a stop to sudden actions, including aggressive or escape actions, and preventing the enemy being able to get hold of anything that could be used as an improvised weapon or an anchor in resisting come-alongs or extractions are more uses for subject manipulation skills. Offsetting the enemy's balance, compromising their stability, and putting them in an enemy-secured, vulnerable position where they can be controlled, contained, and restrained or moved are all aided by the employment of skills to manipulate and force move the enemy. Understanding body mechanics and leverage, including the utilization of fulcrums to maximize effect and cause enemy positional changes, provides close to point-blank body contact range control measures that can contain the enemy in their own right or can be employed as part of the initiation and execution of other means of threat neutralization. Being able to turn the enemy 180 degrees in extractions or redirect them towards exit points by means of enemy manipulation makes such actions less physically demanding. Understanding grips not only on extremities and the head and neck, but also taking advantage of webbing, body armor, and battle dress, belts or trouser waistbands can provide extremely effective means of seizing and securing and directional manipulation of the enemy. Our European military close combat manipulation methods cover all roles, duties, situations, and threat categories. Vehicle extractions, amphibious assault, enemy seizing, securing, and threat neutralization, as well as specific skills for specialist close personal protection, actions on to control, contain, and manipulate assaulters, targeting your protectee, are all inclusive in our specialist roles and duties training packages that such tactics and skills are required for. Other roles including detainee handling and for medical tactical roles like control of EDPs, emotionally disturbed persons, and for safe as possible forensic patients, defensive tactics and control and restraint are made easier and safer when assisted by manipulation tactics and skills. The common basic but most important practices and principles of range, angles, utilization of barriers, stability maintenance, expedient action ground cover, and expedient evasive and escape actions are all important tradecraft training components that add to the chances of safe and effective enemy or assaulter threat neutralization. Having manipulation practices that combine with detainee handling skills cohesively by same system fluid actions provide the capabilities to move, decentralize, lift, statically control, and contain, combined with wide-ranging means and methods of threat neutralization required for specific objective achievement. Same system cohesive skills through commonality will enable transitions from one means and method of threat neutralization to another while maintaining contact, control, and maximum safety throughout such transitions and employments. Skills commonality is very important when transitioning from one seasoned secure status to another. For example, the employment of the transition from a head and neck stress position to an arms decentralized detainee handling status for employing mechanical restraints. Enemy manipulation is also important for crowd combat, using the enemy as a barrier against other enemy assaulters by means of manipulated orientation of the seized and secured enemy. The utilization of pain compliance and short, hard words, orders, and instructions by the combatant to the contained and controlled enemy, instructing them to convey to their comrade enemy assaulters to stop what they are doing as it is causing the enemy harm, can simply by means of short, sharp, hard verbiage and pain compliance achieve situational control. Weapon hand manipulation is an effective means of disarming when the weapon holding hand has been seized, secured, contained, and controlled. The manipulation can be to bodily parts other than the seized and secured bodily part, and the means can range from over hyperextension to overflexion, creating pain at such a level of pain that demands the immediate ceasing of resistance or actions on. Compliance by the loading of human anatomy joints that may not be directly connected to the seized and secured bodily part or extremity is possible by invoking the pressure sensation by controlled calculated loading to the point of the enemy knowing in no uncertain terms that they are in a hopeless situation and helpless in being able to put a stop to the painful effects of pressure loading on the joint and limb. Manipulation of small joints such as fingers and thumbs can achieve effective means and methods to control, contain, disarm, or transition to other skills that fit with roles, duties, and objective achievement requirements. The old saying, pain is your friend, because it lets you know you are alive and can do something to stop the pain, but pressure brings on not only pain but helplessness through the specific bodily part being taken beyond its normal range of movement by means of hard seizure and securing that applies to not only extremities, leverage, but also to employment of stress positions. Manipulation has wide-ranging usages, including assisting with the moving of subjects from one position to another, or as part of decentralization, or demanding they regain their footing and comply with movement requirements. A violent assaulter can be rendered stopped in their tracks and statically compliant, making them pliable in the execution of detainee handling skills, applications including the application of mechanical restraints. Manipulation combined with pain compliance can be utilized as part of searching an enemy to maintain a static, safe, and secure status. Close quarters combat actions on as part of unarmed offensive and unarmed counteroffensive assault skills employments. Enemy manipulation can be introduced to transition from striking or stamp kicking to battlefield takedowns, lethal skills employments, detainee handling, through to ground combat and many other requirements and usages. This is not wrestling and grappling. It's about dominating an enemy on the battlefield or urban operations where there may well be considerable size and strength disparities, not to mention having to deal with dirty or deadly enemy actions on attempts.